The coastal wind of Apollonia carries the salt of the Adriatic, but today it brings only the scent of dust and mounting panic. You are 19 years old, deep in military studies and philosophical debates, preparing to march alongside the legions for a grand Parthian campaign. But that campaign will never happen. A messenger arrives at your compound, his horse lathered and trembling from a relentless ride. He hands you letters from Rome that instantly drain the blood from your face. Julius Caesar, dictator of Rome, your great-uncle and towering patron, has been struck down on the Senate floor. The knives of his closest allies have unspooled his life in a theater built by his greatest rival. The terror of this news is eclipsed by a secondary revelation, a single line in Caesar's hastily unsealed will that abruptly places a massive target on your back. You are named his primary heir. The colossal, blood-soaked legacy of the Roman world's most powerful man now rests entirely on your narrow shoulders. You are a youth thrust into the center of the most dangerous political arena in human history, armed with nothing but a famous name and your own daring. To survive the looming chaos without suffering the same violent demise as your adoptive father, you must transform from a vulnerable student into the undisputed architect of a new empire. This metamorphosis will require a masterful blend of ruthless pragmatism, careful military delegation, and the greatest political theater ever staged. Your ascent to the pinnacle of Roman power is not a simple aristocratic inheritance. You are born Gaius Octavius in 63 BC to a wealthy but distinctly non-noble equestrian family. You do not possess the ancient patrician pedigree that commands immediate, unquestioning respect in the Senate chambers. Worse, your physical constitution is notoriously fragile. You are prone to sudden debilitating illnesses, enduring asthma and severe fevers, a weakness that invites quiet scorn in a hyper-martial society that prizes physical dominance above all else. Yet, beneath this sickly exterior lies a quiet, iron resilience. When you don the toga virilis, the plain white woolen garment marking your official transition to Roman manhood, you are already calculating how to elevate your station. The true measure of your daring reveals itself a few years later when Caesar campaigns in Hispania. Desperate to join him and prove your worth to the dictator, you embark on a perilous Mediterranean voyage despite suffering from a severe illness. The sea is unforgiving. Your vessel is torn apart in a violent storm, leaving you shipwrecked on a hostile, unfamiliar shore. Instead of turning back or waiting for rescue, you trek across dangerous enemy territory with a handful of companions, sick, exhausted, and constantly hunted. When you finally breach Caesar's camp, the aging dictator is utterly stunned by your sheer willpower. He sees past the frail body of a provincial equestrian youth to the cold, calculating ambition burning within. It is this grueling, dangerous journey that proves your mettle, impressing Caesar so deeply that he secretly redraws his will to ensure you become his ultimate successor. The inheritance Caesar leaves you is not a functioning empire, but a fractured, chaotic war zone. Upon returning to Italy from Apollonia, you find Mark Antony, Caesar's swaggering, battle-hardened lieutenant, attempting to claim your political legacy. You realize immediately that a famous name means nothing without armored legions to enforce it. Through shrewd negotiation, raw bribery, and the aura of Caesar's memory, you siphon off his loyal veterans, forcing Antony to acknowledge your power. Alongside Antony and the commander Lepidus, you forge the Second Triumvirate. This legally sanctioned three-man dictatorship is designed to stabilize the collapsing state and hunt down Caesar's assassins. But sustained warfare requires vast, unimaginable sums of gold, and your political standing demands the swift elimination of domestic rivals. You embrace total ruthlessness to secure your fragile grip on Rome. The triumvirs institute the proscriptions, a chilling public list of state enemies who are stripped of their property, declared outside the protection of the law, and marked for death. Hundreds of senators and thousands of equestrians are systematically purged in the streets and their country villas. The immense wealth seized from their estates flows directly into your war chests. Among the condemned is the legendary orator Cicero, a man who once sought to use you as a naive political pawn. Antony fiercely demands Cicero's head, and you, coldly calculating the cost of your alliance, offer up the old statesman without hesitation. We often recoil at the icy brutality of such purges, but in the decaying Roman Republic, a leader either wields the executioner's blade or eventually feels it on his own neck. To survive this viper's nest, you must become the most cold-blooded predator among them. With your enemies in Rome eradicated and your coffers overflowing with stolen wealth, the triumvirate marches east to confront Caesar's assassins. At the Battle of Philippi in 42 BC, the sprawling marshy plains of Greece are choked with dust and the deafening clash of 80,000 legionaries. Brutus and Cassius, the self-proclaimed champions of the old republic, are decisively defeated. Seeing their cause ruined, they take their own lives rather than face the humiliation of capture. Yet your own performance at Philippi is entirely unheroic. You spend the critical hours of the battle sick in your tent, relying heavily on Antony's tactical brilliance to secure the victory. Rather than let this humiliation destroy you, you recognize your own martial shortcomings. You elevate your closest childhood friend, Marcus Vipsanius Agrippa, to command your forces. Agrippa is everything you are not, a brilliant, imposing, and fearless general. You understand a fundamental truth of enduring leadership. You do not need to possess military genius if you are wise enough to elevate and trust men who do. Following Philippi, the fragile alliance between you and Antony inevitably rots. The Roman world is simply too small for two masters. While Antony departs for the exotic allure of Egypt and the political embrace of Cleopatra, you remain in Rome, carefully cultivating the image of a traditional, pious Roman defender. You wage a relentless propaganda war, painting Antony as an Eastern despot corrupted by a foreign queen. When the final rupture occurs, it is Agrippa who engineers the military confrontation. The ultimate reckoning arrives in 31 BC at the naval battle of Actium, off the western coast of Greece. The waters churn with the wreckage of hundreds of galleys. Agrippa's swift, heavily armed Liburnian ships brilliantly outmaneuver Antony's massive, cumbersome dreadnoughts. The engagement is sprawling and chaotic, a terrifying tangle of grappling hooks, blazing fire arrows, and splintering timber. Watching his massive fleet disintegrate, Antony breaks through the lines and flees to Egypt with Cleopatra, abandoning his loyal army to your mercy. Within a year, both Antony and Cleopatra meet their tragic ends in Alexandria. You are 22 years removed from the terrified student in Apollonia, and you are now the undisputed master of the Mediterranean. Winning the Roman world is a matter of steel and gold. Keeping it requires a far more delicate instrument. You remember exactly why Caesar bled to death at the base of Pompey's statue. He flagrantly flaunted his absolute power, demanding the title of dictator for life, and treating the ancient Senate with open, arrogant contempt. You will not make the same fatal error. The surviving senators expect a tyrant. You plan to give them a savior. In 27 BC, you orchestrate a masterclass in political theater, a performance so convincing it secures an empire. You stand before the surviving members of the Senate, men whose families you once proscribed, and solemnly announce that your work is done. You offer to relinquish your control of the legions, the provinces, and the state treasury. With perfectly rehearsed humility, you declare that you are restoring the Republic to the Senate and the people of Rome. The Senate chambers erupt in panicked protest. Your loyalists, carefully planted among the senators, beg you to reconsider. They insist that the state will immediately collapse into horrific civil war without your guiding hand. Feigning profound reluctance, you yield to their desperate pleas. The Senate formally grants you a massive unified province and officially bestows upon you the title Augustus, the revered one. You vehemently refuse the glittering crown of a king and the absolute decree of a dictator. Instead, you ask to be called merely Princeps, the first citizen among equals. You achieve what Caesar could not: absolute power, secured not by the sword, but by a masterful illusion of liberty. 4 years later, during the second settlement of 23 BC, you quietly finalize the legal architecture of your autocracy. You resign the annual consulship, a calculated move that appears to open the highest traditional office to ambitious nobles, easing their aristocratic resentment. In exchange, the Senate grants you tribunician power for life, making your physical person sacrosanct, and giving you the right to veto any legislation. More importantly, they grant you greater proconsular authority, officially making your command superior to every other military governor in the empire. You never have to command an army in the field again. By law, every victory belongs to you. Modern political strategists still study this maneuver. True authority is rarely found in the loudest, most boastful title, but in the quiet, unassailable legal right to overrule everyone else in the room. Decades pass, and your relentless, pragmatic administration ushers in the Pax Romana, a profound era of stability after a century of horrific civil strife. You reorganize the fractured, politically volatile army into a professional standing force, loyal exclusively to the state, and by extension, to you. You pour the vast, newly conquered wealth of Egypt into monumental public works. You commission sweeping aqueducts, broad paved roads, and magnificent temples to the gods. The poet Virgil frequently visits your court, reading verses of the Aeneid that cast your reign as the glorious, divinely ordained destiny of Rome. You live modestly in a simple house on the Palatine Hill, deliberately avoiding the opulent displays of Eastern kings, even as your architects reshape the capital. You famously boast that you found Rome a city of sun-baked brick and left it a city of gleaming marble. Yet, as you successfully mold the vast empire to your precise will, your own family violently slips beyond your control. To solidify the moral foundation of your new era, you enact the Leges Juliae, strict legislation penalizing adultery and heavily promoting traditional marriage. You envision a society of disciplined, virtuous citizens. However, your own daughter, Julia, your only biological child, and a woman you deeply love, rebels against the suffocating hypocrisy of your strict court. She engages in highly public, scandalous affairs, making a mockery of the very laws you force upon the Senate. The public scandal threatens the fragile credibility of your entire regime. Whispers circulate that her lovers are plotting against your life. The agonizing choice becomes devastatingly clear. You must either abandon your moral crusade, admitting your laws do not apply to your own blood, or destroy your own child. You choose the survival of the state over the love of a father. You banish Julia to Ventotene, a desolate, windswept island off the coast of Campania, barely large enough to sustain human life. You forbid her the comforts of wine or male companionship, weeping bitterly in your private Syracuse study as you sign the irreversible decree. Your personal sorrow is compounded by the persistent, gnawing anxiety of imperial succession. You desperately groom young, vibrant heirs, Marcellus, Agrippa, Gaius, and Lucius, hoping to pass your life's work to blood of your choosing. One by one, they contract sudden fevers or fall in distant campaigns, dying long before their time. You are the most powerful man on earth, yet you are utterly powerless against the cold realities of biology and disease. The year is 14 AD. You are 75 years old, resting in a quiet villa in Nola, south of Rome. Your health, frail since your difficult childhood, is finally failing. In an era when previous leaders were routinely stabbed in the forum or eliminated by ambitious rivals, dying quietly in bed is an unfathomable victory. It is the ultimate validation of your lifelong political caution. Yet the dense paranoia that shadowed your 40-year reign lingers to the very last day. Whispers circulate through the tense imperial household that your wife, Livia, has secretly smeared poison on the figs still hanging on the branches in your garden. The rumor suggests she is accelerating your death to ensure her own son, the dour and reluctant Tiberius, firmly takes the throne before another heir can be named. Whether the poisoned figs are real or merely the desperate gossip of a perpetually nervous court remains forever obscured by the heavy, impenetrable curtain of your own propaganda. As your final hours drain away, you call your oldest friends and advisors to your bedside. You ask them for a mirror, instructing your weeping attendants to brush your thinning hair and adjust your sagging jaw. For 4 decades, you have played a flawless part, wearing the humble mask of a simple Republican magistrate, while wielding the absolute, terrifying authority of a monarch. The vulnerable, underestimated 19-year-old student standing in the dust of Apollonia is a distant memory. You look at the men gathered around your bed and ask them if you have played your part well in the grand comedy of life. They assure you that you have. As you draw your final breath, transitioning from mortal man to the deified Divus Augustus, you leave behind an empire of marble and peace. It is an enduring legacy, secured by a magnificent, relentless performance that dictates the imperial future of Western civilization.